Hey guys, how we doing? Jawad here with Hit the Apex podcast. We're here another week. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining, getting on board and everything. And yeah, how you guys doing? Hope everyone is well. Kind of feels like every day is blending into one another, and then weeks blend into another, and before you know it, the months will start doing the same thing as well. It's kind of lose sense of time, or me personally, I kind of lose track of things without, having any racing on, because, a lot of the way that my calendar gets structured is around, oh, okay, so I know which weekend this is because it's this race on this weekend, or that race is on this weekend, kind of thing. So you kind of build your year, or you remember what day it is based around what's going on in the world of motorsport. But at the moment it's like, okay, we're on an extended holiday. Basically it's like the summer months, but now going over into winter and everything. But anyway, I've said many times already in the last few weeks that that's all secondary, at the moment, given that everyone's health and safety is probably more paramount, or definitely is more paramount. So, hope you guys are keeping well and everything, staying in touch with loved ones, and staying in touch with friends and everything. And yeah, just trying to stay positive too, because that's really important at this time, with what is going on in the world at the moment. So I'm here again this week. Plenty to talk about, actually, and I'm sure there'll be some of you out there who'll be happy to hear the podcast go on, despite the fact that there isn't much racing happening in the world. I'll talk about the Supercars E-Series. We had a really exciting race, or a few races last night, with round 2, and then Max Verstappen also joining in with the Supercars regulars too, so that was really exciting, and some other stuff as well. A bit of what's going to happen in the next few weeks with my own content and everything. But I wanted to start off with some sad news, which came just at the end of the weekend, Sunday, I think it was, Sunday night. And that was the passing of Sir Stirling Moss. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Stirling Moss, F1 racer, well, he pretty much raced everything he could get his hands on in the 50s, 60s, regarded as the greatest driver to have never won a championship, but I guess in his mantra it was all about winning races, and that he did, winning 16 Grand Prix back in his day, including 4 in that title almost title winning season in 1958 against Mike Hawthorn. Of course, the Portuguese Grand Prix that year, very infamous incident where Mike Hawthorn was going to be disqualified for restarting or rejoining the race the wrong way after he was spun around. But a bit of great sportsmanship there from Sir Stirling Moss. He was witness to that incident with Hawthorn and was able to fess up to the stewards, and they overturned it. So in the end, it cost Moss the title by 1 point, but ultimately it was just sportsmanship. I think that everyone gave him the credit for that day, but still, 1950 is one of the most brutal eras of Grand Prix racing, winning 16 Grand Prix. He was runner-up in the championship, I think, 4 times, and then, of course, racing for famous marques like Mercedes. He's a Mercedes legend. Martin Brundle, obviously, summing up Sir Stirling Moss as a mighty racer and gentleman, which, given what you've read and heard and seen, perhaps, that's probably the best way to sum him up, and the sportsmanship that we saw from him in 58 with Mike Hawthorn at Portugal. Yeah, you can definitely say he was a gentleman. Some of the other races that he's achieved or won and been successful at, so the Mille Miglia, which was a time trial that happened in Italy, didn't last very long because of how dangerous it was and everything. It was basically one big road race, from one end to the other. It was like more than 1,000 miles or something, and you can basically just drive flat out and on public roads too. So it was like, okay, Basically, it's like Need for Speed, Need for Speed in real life or something, the game, but a lot more brutal. But yeah, Moss was able to win that in 1955 in the Mercedes 300 SLR, which is a car that's been immortalised by that victory and by Stirling Moss, to the point where a few years ago Mercedes made a tribute tribute speedster car named after Stirling Moss, so the SLR Stirling Moss edition, limited edition car, and that was an ultimate tribute for them. It's a road car that I'm pretty sure they're all sold out, extremely rare. They probably only built like, I don't know, it was a very limited number, but pretty cool if you can drive it in a video game, if it's in there or whatever. And of course, Moss was the only Brit to win that race as well, so given that the race didn't really last much longer after 55, so that's a record that will stand for the rest of time now. So that's, another really good achievement. He did something ridiculous number, like over 500 races, and then I think he won 200 and something of them. So a great strike rate for him. Like, he was just so adaptable. Get out of one thing, get into another. He did Le Mans as well with Juan Manuel Fangio, who was of course his Mercedes teammate in F1, but that race or that year they had to withdraw, unfortunately, because there was an accident involving the other car which killed 83 members of the crowd. But a year later he went on to take the class victory with Aston Martin, with teammate Peter Collins, and he finished second outright in the race too, so a bit of success there at Le Mans for him. He also raced at the Bathurst 1000, which was really good. As an Aussie, you got to look at all the Aussie races and everything, and Bathurst, of course, is our pinnacle, and the Bathurst 1076 with Sir Jack Brabham, of course, another legendary driver and world champion in that era. Unfortunately, they didn't even finish the race or make it too far into the race. They had a DNF due to stuck gears. They qualified in the top 10, though, which was impressive, but yeah, unfortunately, that was Sir Stirling Moss's only effort at Bathurst, and it was a DNF, so that would have been great to have seen him come back and do some more. But hey, busy man, going around doing all sorts of races, and few people have talked about how it's almost a lost art these days, seeing drivers multidisciplined, and if they're in Formula One they can go and drive something else. I mean, more recently we did see Nico Hulkenberg do it in 2015, where he went off and won Le Mans with Porsche on his first attempt, and of course Fernando Alonso doing the Indy 500 whilst still a McLaren F1 driver too. So we kind of seen it creep back in a little way, but yeah, this whole, I guess, doing 2 championships at once or 3 championships at once, it's kind of a lost art now, and it's just very difficult to actually do, given the fact that there's so many sponsorship and contractual obligations that drivers are bound by, and it's just very commercial. It was great last year, though, seeing at the Bathurst 1000 Walkinshaw and Andretti United able to utilise their partnership and bring over some IndyCar stars. So Alexander Rossi and James Hinchcliffe came over and did the wildcard at Bathurst. Great experience for them, and it was just good to see that exposure, and again seeing multidiscipline drivers as well being able to get out of one car and come over and do another category or a major race. So hopefully it's something that we rediscover, or the guys rediscover, once we get back to racing, and in the future as well, of course. But for now, yeah, it was very sad, of course, to hear about Sir Stirling Moss, age 90, had been battling with illness for some time now. So 90 is a really good age, and he survived one of the most brutal and dangerous eras of racing, and lived a pretty full life, you got to say. So yeah, Vales of Stirling Moss. Sad also on the same day, if you're fans of comedy or comedy lovers out there, Tim Brooke Taylor, of course, as well. passing away, and that was due to COVID-19, they confirmed. So, bit of a dark day, I guess, but, it's important that we celebrate what these people stood for and all the achievements that they were able to get under their belts in the time that they were at the height of their success. And yeah, for Stirling Moss, of course, it was, being able to win 16 Grand Prix. He won pretty much everything he contested, and, places like Le Mans, Mille, one of the most dangerous races, coming to Bathurst. Whatever he did, he was really good at. And he'll be someone I'm sure the F1 community and the motorsport community will sorely miss worldwide. But yeah, moving it on now, and speaking of multidisciplined, I guess this doesn't really count given that it's virtual, but Max Verstappen, F1 race winner, coming to do, or not coming, he was at his apartment in Monaco, I'm pretty sure, but joining the Supercars E-Series, and it's great to see the success that the Supercars E-Series has had in the 2 weeks that it's been on. I just talked about it briefly last week, how it was good to see that all the drivers are involved. They've got the real-life commentators. They've got the proper presentation as well for the broadcast. And, even though it's all good fun and games, there's still a championship on the line and people are taking it seriously. Like Anton De Pasquale last week was rather miffed about getting that penalty for that late hit on Jack LeBrock. And then, of course, you've got the driving standards observer, Craig Baird, on board too. So it's really been quite appealing in the first 2 rounds. And of course, with Verstappen coming on board too, I'm sure there would have been a lot of interest among F1 circles as well overnight watching it. So hopefully for the next round, which is going to be at Bathurst, in fact, next week, we'll get to see Max return. He was a bit non-committal when they asked him whether he would be back or not for next week, but I'm sure hopefully he'll say yes. And what if it attracts other F1 drives to do wildcards? Lando Norris, of course, another big esports person, or does a lot of sim racing, so he'd be a great coup as well. And then, of course, any of the IndyCar guys or any driver really who is interested globally to get on board. And I've talked more about my thoughts on the E-Series and how it's been a success in an article I've written, so that'll hopefully be published by Friday, which is tomorrow, on the Raw, so you could be able to read it on there. But yeah, basically I just talk about how, just the broadcast and the presentation is a big winner, the way that it's been structured into a championship, how they've got all the drivers involved as well. Platform, for me, doesn't really have anything to do with it. I guess iRacing is a lot more professional and more of a sim racer than, say, the F1 video game is by Codemasters, which is the reason Max Verstappen doesn't do the F1 virtual series, is because he is not a fan of the game, so he would rather do iRacing. But yeah, it's just the way that they've presented it and got everyone on board, having cameras on all the drivers from their, I guess their respective homes or garages or sheds or whatever. Or if you're Rick Kelly, you've got a huge bug-out bunker, basically, that is built on his property. It looks impressive from what we've seen on TV. Like, it's every person's dream to have, I guess, a shed like that, or it's more like a warehouse that he's got. So really cool there from Rick Kelly. But yeah, a lot of the guys, they've really got into it now, into the second week, and hopefully next week we get to see some more fun racing. And that's the most important thing, that it's fun. It's not, even though it is competitive, everyone is having good fun. I'm having a great giggle on the TV because, obviously this isn't real, and if somebody crashes, you don't worry about them, or you're worried about, whether they're okay or not. You can actually laugh about it. So seeing Jamie Whincup get like torpedoed or whatever yesterday at Silverstone, had a good giggle about that because it just looked hilarious with him driving around with no boot lid, basically. So I'm sure they'll be having good fun as well doing it. But yeah, in real life, of course, your first reaction is that I hope they're okay, the driver's okay, that looked nasty and all. But yeah, in the virtual world, it's a completely different story. So have a good giggle, good fun and games, and yeah, Bathurst next week. Hopefully we get to see some good racing again, and a lot of drivers out there internationally who talk about wanting to race at Bathurst. So now's your opportunity. Come race a supercar at Bathurst, albeit in the virtual world. And as I said, you can read the article when it's available on The Raw, which is theraw.com.au, the sports website that I write for. I haven't written anything for a while now, so I think, now now I will actually have time to be able to put out more content. So tomorrow, Friday, the 17th of April, is going to be my last day at work, or all of our last days at work. So the shop will be closing, and we will no longer be required to attend for a period of time, which is unknown at this moment. So it's here. The day has finally come. We've had the confirmation, so it'll be hard not to feel a bit emotional when leaving and everything, handing your keys in and all that sort of stuff. And of course, as I've said, over the last few weeks, it's really been good while everyone is isolating and cut off from each other, not being able to see friends, is that I've been able to hang out with my work family and be close with them and everything, and still have the fun that we normally do, carry on like we do, like a bunch of rascals, motley crew we are there. So, last time that we'll see each other for some time as well. It's only going to make us more hungrier to get back there and, continue having the fun that we do, servicing the community and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, for the time being, I guess, we'll be bidding farewell, but not goodbye. That's the main thing. So yeah, given that I'll have more time on my hands to focus on all the motorsport stuff at home, the Revisitation series that I was looking at doing, where I'd be writing about old content. The aim is to rewatch or rediscover races and seasons that I was invested into, but before I started writing. So I was writing race reports, just putting them up on, I forgot where I was uploading them. Might have just had a WordPress blog or something back then, but not getting them properly published and with a proper audience and everything. So for that, I thought, F1 season reviews, or even going back and watching all the races if I can find them on the archive for 2010 and 2012. That was an initial thought. For those, I know my mate Josh Kerr, who will be listening, I'm sure. How you doing, Josh? He's going to go and review the 1999 season, and he's been doing the F1 Rewind races that they've been putting up on YouTube. So he did the 97 European Grand Prix, the Jerez Grand Prix last week, where the title finale between Schumacher and Villeneuve. Schumacher, of course, out controversially, and Villeneuve went on to win the title, and victory went to Mika Hakkinen, his first win in F1. So I did end up, I think I watched that before. I can't even remember now what I did last week. Did I watch it before the podcast, or did I say I was going to watch it and then... Anyway, let's not dwell on the past now. Anyway, even though we are going to be watching some old races. But yeah, no, Josh is doing that, and I think it's really good for him to learn about, the F1 in the 90s. It's really good just being able to watch that old content and picking up things that you might not have known before and stuff. So I really look forward to his content and everything that he's going to be putting out too. So that's what I'll do F1 wise, focus on 2010 and 2012 for now, and then plan some stuff later on. Bathurst 1000s I've said as well for supercars, so maybe rewatch some of the highlights, or if I can find the full races for some of those ones, probably before 2016. So I think 2016 I did write a thing about it. 2015, not sure, but 2014 is one I really want to focus on. The famous, or the longest ever race in Bathurst history, where the track broke up, they had to red flag it. Basically a big halftime break they had, and then at the end of it, we had Chaz Mostert, who started last and finished first in the race with Paul Morris, and the last lap pass on Jamie Whincup, who ran out of fuel. And of course, Craig Lowndes as well, Bathurst legend. Got to see him in the flesh win Bathurst back in 2015. That was a surreal experience, I guess. the new king of the mountain. I think he's still 2 wins behind Peter Brock's record of 9, but you know, two wins away. You know, it's closer than anyone else has been. So, yeah. But CL, some of his famous wins: '06 with Jamie Whincup, that first one in a while for him, but also straight after the death of Peter Brock. You know, it was an emotional week for everyone and an emotional race, and I guess it was befitting for Lowndes to have won that one, given that he was basically Brock's protege or protege, and basically became the new champion of the people's champion, like Brock was. So '06 is a really special one, really emotional. 2010 as well, given that it was start of a new decade, and because Lowndes pretty much won the race single-handedly, given that Mark Scaife cracked a rib and couldn't really race for the whole distance, and basically I think he did not even the minimum laps that a co-driver has to do because of his injury. So yeah, Lowndes pretty much triple or quadruple stinting it to win the race back in 2010. So some important races there. Bathurst, there could be other races too, like Sandowns and stuff like that. I guess it kind of ties into this other thing that I'm doing at the moment, is having a look through and restoring a lot of my old photography from the old Sony camera that I used to have back, you know, I guess 5-6 years ago. Yeah, probably that sounds about right. I was more into film, you know, I was keen to do filming, and I had like a little film camera which you could take stills on as well. But then, you know, I started, you know, getting into photography, and I wanted to do stills and stuff like that, and I was using that camera to take stills. A lot of it, yeah, you know, kind of limited by the camera's capability, you know, lack of, you know, shutter and everything. What do you call it? You know, endless shutter and all that sort of stuff. I was kind of limited by that, but still got some pretty decent shots, I think. Not the greatest. I mean, my content now, I think, is a whole lot better since I got the DSLR, but I still did okay, I think, when I was doing film as well. But yeah, so I'm going back and restoring a few of those old photos. So I spent the Easter long weekend just gone by having a look at a few different folders. So I started off with the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix in 2014, got a few photos that I really liked, and I kind of touched them up, you know, had to put a few filters in them as well to make them look a bit more crisp than they were. So why not even, you know, like looking at those photos, tell the story of that race? I thought maybe write it down and publish that. So, you know, 2015 Bathurst is one of those ones that I've finished going through all those photos, and I've got now. I think some of my best photos from Bathurst 2015 was the top 10 shootout, which was in the wet. Rain changes everything, of course, and at a place like Bathurst, it's pretty mighty. And I was positioned at turn 1, just on the outside of turn 1, and seeing the guys start their shootout laps. Really good, you know, and now touching up the colour and everything as well, so the cars really pop out, and you can see, of course, the rain and everything as well. So that was really cool. There was, I think, one of Shane Van Gisbergen drifting out of the pit lane in the rain too, so I've got that one ready and restored as well. And then, of course, all the Grand Prix, the Australian Grand Prix that I went to in between as well before I started doing the work with the media, with the accreditation. So just trying to take photos at fan forums and stuff like that, and a little bit of on-track stuff, but not too much. So I did 2015. I've gone and touched up all those photos. So basically all those I'll be putting up on Instagram, you know, probably like a few at a time. So I put the a couple of those Abu Dhabi ones up on Instagram already. If you are keen to follow me on Instagram, you can at Dr. 46th. Basically, same as my personal Twitter handle. So you can have a look at those photos there if you're really keen. And yeah, I've got a few that are ready to go up, but then yeah, there's heaps more that I still need to work on. And as I said, perhaps telling the story of that race might be something I might end up doing as well, writing a few articles about, you know, what's the story behind behind the photo, and how did that race pan out. And I think 2015 Bathurst is definitely one of those ones that I would like to do that with. Other content like sports car content, I don't know, it's hard to gauge, and I guess your feedback would be much appreciated too, guys. Is, do you want to see me write about sports cars? WEC. I have been really keenly following the 24-hour Le Mans for the last few years, of course, since, while Audi and Porsche were still contesting. 2016 was an important year because it was the return of Ford. They returned to the GTE ranks, and I guess it was 60 years, of course, after their famous win in 1966, where they finished 1, 2, 3. So for the Ford GT to return that year, and also I think they finished 1, 2, they finished 1, 2, and finished 1, 3, and Ferrari were on the podium. So again, a Ford versus Ferrari 60 years later in 2016, but in the GTE class. So might do something about that and how special it is for Ford as a mark for that. MotoGP with their vintage races as well that they're showing on YouTube. So I watched the 07 race in Phillip Island. Of course, the first of 6 in a row for Casey Stoner, the Aussie. And of course, that was after he already wrapped up his first championship for Ducati, and it was the last championship that Ducati has won in MotoGP. So that's, in itself is an interesting story. And I guess that's where I know some people have asked, why you want to look back at old stuff. You should be living in the now or looking ahead. But from a analytical and sporting point of view, sometimes looking back and seeing what was already done and put into stone has a great impact on what's happening today. And, of course, for Ducati and MotoGP, it seems that Casey Stoner was the only one who was able to really unlock the potential of that bike and be able to take it to where it was. Because, of course, after that, we know that Nicky Hayden, the 06 champion, got on board the Ducati, wasn't able to do much with it. Valentino Rossi, in search of title number 10 after leaving Yamaha, he went over there and wasn't able to get anything out of the Ducati. And then I guess in recent years they've had a bit more of a revival around Andrea Dovizioso, Andrea Iannone when he was on the bike. I don't know what to think of Iannone anymore. Perhaps not a big fan. As a racer, he's quick, but given all the other stuff that's going on, he's just been banned for doping, and he still denies that he did anything wrong. Yeah, I don't know what. Maybe that's the plastic surgery talking, mate. But yeah, Iannone and Dovizioso, and then of course Danilo Petrucci coming on board to the factory team in the last couple of years. So yeah, and Dovizioso had 2 opportunities to win the championship, didn't. What's going to happen for Ducati next? And there was a lot of talk, I guess, coming into this season about how the silly season Ducati's going to be looking for high-profile rider, but in the end, Maverick Vinales ended up staying put. Vinales ended up staying put at Yamaha. They locked in Quartararo as well. Do Ducati go and get Jack Miller if Danilo Petrucci's not the guy that's going to take him forward? What about Dovizioso? Has he had enough too? There was talk about a rift between he and Ducati at the end of last year, so a lot of ifs heading into this season, but of course that's all on hold and for good reason. But yeah, so races like that, MotoGP, and in any sport, what's happened in the past has a big impact on what's happening now and then potentially in the future too. So a few more interesting races I am keen to check out, and the 2012 Phillip Island Grand Prix, which is one that I remember fondly watching just on the TV. I haven't been to Phillip Island, so, I've been to Phillip Island, I've been to the track, but I've never seen a Grand Prix there, which is very disturbing, but it'll happen. I got to do it before Valentino retires because it would be very sad. I really want to get some good photos of the MotoGP bikes. Now, so yeah, 12 Phillip Island, of course, with Casey Stoner winning his final race before retirement. It was the same weekend that Marc Marquez won the Moto2 championship, and then, of course, we're all like, oh, yeah, he's replacing Stoner. Surely, he's not going to be as good straight off the bat. Next thing you know, he's won 6 world championships, going back all the way to 2012. So, again, another thing where, at the time you don't think it, but then 6 years down the track, it's a totally different story. So, yeah, that's kind of a bit of a sampler as to what I might do. There's endless stuff out there. I think the main thing here is, and I think everyone's going to fall into the trap of this while being stuck at home and in isolation, is that you're going to say that, oh, I've got heaps to do, I've been meaning to do this for so long, yada, yada, yada. But it's just finding the motivation to get onto it kind of thing straight away. So, yeah, you've got the time, but you don't want to lose time either. You want to be able to keep yourself occupied, keep yourself active, keep your brain active as well. Mentally, you don't want to fall into a dark place or anything because you're not doing anything at the moment. So that way, setting out a plan for yourself or a structure, saying, look, I'd like to cover this, I'd like to cover that. In my instance, means I can sort of build a little bit of a structure and be like, okay, I'm going to be doing this today, I'm going to be doing that today, and not just sit there on the couch watching Netflix all day, downing grog or eating snacks. No, we'll keep that for the weekend. Try and behave ourselves. So, yeah, otherwise, what content do you want to see me revisit or write about? So you can always reach out on the Twitters, get on to Hit the Apex Media for that. So that's the Revisitation series as far as motorsport is concerned. And again, it'll be when next week hits and the reality sinks in that I'm no longer at work or having to think about work as much. I'm going to be like, crap, what do I do? And I've got to just motivate myself and kick myself or hit myself in the face and say, look, you got to do this today, you got to do that today, and that way you'll just keep the ball rolling kind of thing. So with that out of the way, Easter was kind of a little bit of a teaser as to how life would be like at home, but I just spent most of the time resting, really. I needed to rest and recuperate a little bit, just mentally the last few weeks or ever since the Australian Grand Prix. It's been very stressful and with work and everything, so it was just nice to shut down a little bit and spend 5 days kind of just letting the body recuperate. I spent the weekend part of the of Easter watching the original 6 Star Wars films, so I haven't done that for about 5 years, so it was quite nice. I think ever since I last watched them, so that's the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, I hadn't seen them since before The Force Awakens came out in 2015. So yeah, it has been a long time, and looking back on them now, sorry guys, the mic just cut out for some reason. Looking back on them now, I guess I'm a little less harsh on the prequels, given how disappointing the sequel trilogy was. Attack of the Clones is still a pile of fecal matter, I'm not going to deny that. I still love the last kind of 30 minutes or whatever, the start of the Clone Wars and everything. But given the fact that the sequel trilogy just ended up being a hot mess of confusion, like there was no one clear narrative and the ending was really weak, The Rise of Skywalker, I'm not going to talk too much about it given that there are still people who probably haven't seen it and don't want spoilers. It just felt like a hot mess of confusion at the end of the day, the sequel trilogy. Like, Force Awakens was good fun, played it safe, and we're like, okay, I mean, they're not going to really take any risks, I think, with this, and, we'll just test the waters a little bit and see how the audience reacts. And it was good fun. it kind of, after a few watches, you kind of get bored of it and be like, yeah, it's just, they're just trying to rehash A New Hope or whatever. The Last Jedi, then afterwards, it was bold but very confusing still, but I give credit to it for being bold, to step out and try and find take this narrative in a new direction. So for that, I gave it praise, but it still had a lot of weak points. But then the way it all kind of culminated in The Rise of Skywalker, obviously the media attention around it at the time, and the political sniping between directors, of course, Rian Johnson doing The Last Jedi and J.J. Abrams being brought back to do Rise of Skywalker, was kind of like, all right, so basically, rather than a story, you guys are basically just taking hits at each other, or the Rise of Skywalker was basically just one big hit on The Last Jedi. Like, come on, seriously. But then again, Star Wars fans are quite fickle and they'll hate anything or whatever. So, yeah, it was a bit disappointing in that way. I'm not overly fanatical and like, oh my god, it was like, the way some people reacted on social media and everything. So, just very diplomatically and passively saying that, yeah, it was kind of just a bit of a mess, the sequel trilogy. But look, I really appreciated it. It gave me a good throwback into how I really loved Star Wars growing up. Had all the Lego and, the video games as well. Star Wars Battlefront 2, the original Battlefront 2, still one of my favourite games. The Lego Star Wars series as well has been quite awesome. Revenge of the Sith is still my favourite of the prequel trilogy. A lot of memes to come out of that and in-jokes and everything. Phantom Menace, kind of, yeah, take it or leave it. Pod racing, that was okay. I was really into it for a time, and I guess, George Lucas is a bit of an F1 fan, isn't he? He turns up to F1 races, so I guess, yeah, he wanted to put a bit of an F1 element into the pod racing thing. But yeah, then when you look at the originals, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, absolute classics. You don't try to pick them apart for the special effects and stuff like that. It's like watching old Doctor Who, the 1950s and 60s, and even in the 70s, where special effects wasn't really in their forte. It was more about the storytelling, and that's what the original Star Wars is. So yeah, for that, so good watching it again. And when you look at where it is now, I think Star Wars, like, ever since they got sold to Disney and everything, and they've been able to expand the universe, even though they kind of erased all the expanded universe content that was previously created in books and all that. I think what they've done with things like Rogue One and The Mandalorian offers a good escape from, I guess, the main saga, which is around the sky. They call it the Skywalker saga now. So Rogue One, great film. I might watch that this weekend, actually, if I don't feel too Star Wars'd out. It is a bit much, when you go and watch all the movies in one hit. And Mandalorian, of course, we watched it over the summer, around Christmas time. It was a good series. So things like that offer a good escape, but at the same time, it's like too much Star Wars can also be a bad thing. Just trying to really saturate the franchise, just for the sake of having a new movie every year, which this year will not be the case. But hopefully, we will get a second season of The Mandalorian. Also, got the chance to rewatch TT Closer to the Edge. If you guys are fans of the Isle of Man TT or just want to watch a good movie, get onto it. Came out in 2011, narrated by Jared Leto, of course, the lead singer of 30 Seconds to Mars, if you're a fan of those guys. And of course, a prolific actor himself. Good movies he's done too. Probably still pissed off about the Joker. The fact that he didn't get a phone call or anything about auditioning for that part that Joaquin Phoenix ended up doing and won the Oscar for. Going to watch that again as well at some point. That was bloody brilliant. dark, but very brilliant. Anyway, yeah, Jared Leto narrating the TT movie. I guess in that time it's hilarious when you look back at the narrative of that centered around the 2010 Isle of Man TT and where we are now, 2020. Guy Martin still hasn't won a TT, given that he was kind of the main character and all that, and he actually stopped going to the TT a couple of years ago, or stopped racing altogether, so there's that one. McPint, John McGuinness, 23 TT wins now compared to where he was back in 2010 when they filmed that. Few injuries later as well, but 23 wins now, which means he is 3 wins behind Joey Dunlop's record of 26 overall. His nephew, Michael Dunlop, of course, with 19 wins now, and I did bring up last year on the podcast at some point the tragic death of his brother William Dunlop. So very sad, I guess. And the Dunlop story, you can watch that. There's a whole other documentary film about the Dunlop dynasty back in 2014, I think it came out, and that one's narrated by Liam Neeson. Good movie, you should check it out. Talking about, of course, Joey Dunlop and his brother Robert, who is the father of Michael and William Dunlop. Joey, basically, just this legend of a racer, and in motorcycle circles regarded as one of the greatest. And then, of course, Robert Dunlop as well, tragically being killed. I think it was, I can't remember what race it was, but Michael was there, and then the next day after his father was killed in a crash, Michael, even though he wasn't supposed to race, came out and raced and won that race. So very emotional. These road racing guys are just total different breed of person. They're just, you think MotoGP and World Superbike riders are nuts. These road racers take it to a whole new level, and you got to respect them for it. It is, the ultimate passion where you're willing to put it all on the line to be able to get that adrenaline rush or to fight for victory. And for these guys, it's about the freedom, to have the mountain course there on the Isle of Man all to yourself, between you and the bike, the harmony between man and machine. It's something else entirely, and that's why I have a lot of respect for the motorcycle races for that, because it seems you can see the harmony between man and machine a lot better than you can with a race car, for example. Even with open wheelers, where you'll see the helmet of the driver, you won't see the rest of them because they're of course protected in the cockpit. But with racing bikes, of course, everything is exposed. You've got the rider there in his or her leathers, and you see every movement, the way that they move on the bike, the lean angle and everything, stick your leg out, elbows down, all that sort of stuff, and the head movement as well. So it's a whole different thing. And yeah, the Isle of Man TT, of course, regarded as one of the most dangerous races in the world still. And yeah, going back and watching that movie was quite good. So yeah, and Road is another one then, if you want to follow the Dunlop dynasty, that'd be a good one to watch too. And I did write about this a few years ago about Ian Hutchinson, who in the TT movie in 2010, he became the first rider until now to have won all 5 of the races, the solo races in the TT week. So that was a good haul for him. He ended up then, after doing his leg, got ran over at a superbike race, and they had to do a complete leg reconstruction. There was a good documentary on that, I think, that they did in-house, the commercial company behind the TT, and basically charting his recovery and everything. And when he did make his comeback eventually, he came and won 3 races out of 5 that week. So that was really impressive, and I think I wrote about it. It was either 2016 that he made his comeback, and now he's up to 16 wins in total, because he could have lost his leg. He was basically hanging on by a thread, and they rebuild the whole thing, and then he's able to come back and do one of the dangerous races in the world. So you got to take your hat off to him. Really good stuff. So bit of other media there for you to potentially check out. I know Star Wars isn't everyone's cup of tea, and I don't really wax lyrical much about it anymore either. It's, if you like it, I'll talk about it, or if you want to get into it, I'll get you into it, but I'm not going to force it upon you because it's not really my thing with anything at all. Music-wise, just quickly, The Cure. Is it The Cure? A lot of people are saying that at the moment, using that joke. I just had to force it in. And here's me saying that I don't really force anything upon anyone. Anyway, just been really listening to The Cure quite a lot, enjoying them again. Pictures of You, probably my favourite song, so get onto them if you're keen on a bit of gothic rock, a bit of post-punk, very mellow kind of listening. So it's like a far cry from the usual heavier stuff that I listen to. Like I was listening to The Cure yesterday morning, and then by the end of the day, on the way home, I had Stray from the Path on. So there you go, big contrast between the two. And Stray from the Path, Outbreak. That's probably the song that sums up what's going on now as well. So get onto that. Other than that, guys, I think that's pretty much it for this week. It is likely that I will podcast next week, given that I will have free time on my hands. Feel free to reach out as always. You can reach us on the usual Twitter channel, but of course, listening to the podcast as well, iTunes, Spotify, the whole lot, or listen in browser on Transistor. Otherwise, take it easy, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Ciao.